heat waves, drought, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, blizzards, bitter cold. Extreme weather has an incredible impact on people across the globe. On Mount Washington, our scientists brave some of the worst weather on the planet to improve our understanding of our warming world.
All right, good evening and welcome everyone to Mount Washington Observatory's Science in the Mountains lecture series. My name is Brian Fitzgerald and I'm the Director of Education here for Mount Washington Observatory. And joining us this evening to talk about ways to engage our communities with science is Seacoast Science Center's Community Programs Naturalist, Katie Brodeur. So thanks so much for joining us for tonight's program. If you're not already familiar, Mount Washington Observatory is a nonprofit member-supported organization with a mission to advance the understanding of the forces that create Earth's weather and climate. And the way that we do that and accomplish our mission is through operating our Summit Weather Station with around-the-clock weather observation and forecasting, by conducting research and product testing projects, and by developing and offering innovative educational programs. If you have questions at any point for tonight's speaker, feel free to use the Q&A button that you'll find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll make sure to leave time at the end for a question and answer session. If you're joining us on the live stream on Facebook, welcome. Thanks so much for joining that way. While we won't be able to respond to your questions during the program, we'll be sure to follow up as quickly as we can after the fact. If you'd like to join us for an upcoming Science in the Mountains program through Zoom, please be sure to register over at mountwashington.org. All righty, well, before I introduce Katie here, I just wanted to suggest a set of poll questions here for everybody in the audience tonight. So if you're joining on Zoom, you will see these popping up on your screen just now. We have 4 questions for you tonight, or excuse me, 3 questions for you. The first one, just curious where you're joining from, what region of the country. Second question, curious, since tonight we are going to be talking, or Katie's going to be talking quite a bit about community or citizen science. Curious if you think you've participated in a program before. Yes, no, or maybe you're not sure. And then finally, a nice trivia question, because I know Katie will be talking about her work and the work of Seacoast Science Center along the coast of New Hampshire and the Gulf of Maine. So the trivia question here is, how many miles of coastline does New Hampshire have? Is it 10, 13, 18, or 52 miles of coastline? All right, and I'll give folks just another few more seconds here to get your responses in, and I'll close out the poll and we'll take a look at the results here in about 3, 2, 1. All righty, let's share some of those results. Well, it looks like quite a few of you, the majority, are joining from the Northeast tonight, but we have representation from every corner of the country, including a couple folks from outside the US of A as well. So welcome to all of you, no matter where you're participating from. The second question, have you participated in a community or citizen science program before? And most of you have, 60% of you have. So interested to learn more about maybe some of the opportunities you've participated in, especially as we get to the Q&A later on. And then finally, how many miles of coastline does New Hampshire have? Well, no one went for 10 miles, but the rest of you pretty evenly split among 13, 18, or 52 miles. This might have been a pretty tough one, especially if you're maybe not a native of the area here, knowing New Hampshire's small but mighty coastline. So at any rate, we'll go ahead and stop sharing those results right there. Without further ado, I'd love to welcome Katie to the program. Katie, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Hi, how's it going?
Hey, Katie.
Hey,
Thanks.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining. And I can hear you and see you, and the floor is yours. Love to hear more about your work and the work at Seacoast Science Center.
Alrighty, thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm just gonna share my screen real quick. Alrighty. So I'm coming to you from, I'm coming from you from Massachusetts, but the organization that I am lucky enough to work for is called the Seacoast Science Center in Rye, New Hampshire, beautiful Rye, New Hampshire. And this is a beautiful shot of that building. And it is located within Odiorn Point State Park in Rye, New Hampshire. And that's why we asked about how many miles of coastline folks think there are in New Hampshire. I think the Seacoast is a beautiful area, but it gets a little forgotten about sometimes. So the Seacoast of New Hampshire has 18 miles of coastline, and that is counting all of these beautiful curves and crevices that you see along the coast here. Sorry, there's my new baby in the background with Dad. And a lot of folks will say 13 as well. If you drove up the coast, you would be driving along 13 miles of coastal road, but every nook and cranny counted. That gets you to 18 miles of coastline. So a small little portion of a large coastline of the eastern United States, but it's some of the most beautiful, rich, biodiverse habitat that we are fortunate enough to have in our state. And it also accounts for a lot of our resources in terms of our fisheries and wildlife management and recreation as well. So that's why we asked that question. My role at the Seacoast Science Center is to run our community programming. So where we engage our public and our community partners in really amazing community science projects. And we're going to get into all about community science, what it is, how we do it at the Seacoast Science Center. But primarily, before we do all of that, I just wanted to introduce everyone to the Science Center through some beautiful images here coming up in a second. Here, let's start this going. So I'm going to talk through this video here. So once again, the Seacoast Science Center is located within Odiorn Point State Park, which makes up a chain of state parks up on along New Hampshire's coast. There's quite a few state parks within just this short 18-mile stretch. You have Wallace Sands, Jettis Beach, and Odiorn Point, to name just three. It's a 130-acre park, so it's kind of small when you compare it to some of our state parks inland, but it has some of the most incredible biodiversity that you could ever see. There are 7 distinct habitats located within the park. We have rocky intertidal zones, sandy beaches, salt marshes, woodlands, and we're also straddling the estuarine network that goes up into the Great Bay and coastal marine ecosystems as well. So it's really a special opportunity and a location for study. There's a lot to be studied here. And the learning that we do here at the Seacoast Science Center is really special. We try to create an environment that is welcoming, inviting, that builds confidence, brings joy, and empowers the learner. So our primary goal is to build confidence and resiliency with our students and with our visitors. And we want to inspire and empower, and most importantly, engage in action. And community science programming helps us to do all of those things. We do a lot of formal group programming with students and visitors here at the Science Center and out in the park, but we also take people to our tidal shores, our salt marshes, and then we do a lot of informal teaching as well, like you saw at our touch tanks with volunteers and naturalists manning those. So we have a lot of great opportunity for some great engagement in both of those ways. Alrighty, one of the ways that I at the Science Center am involved is by creating community science programming. So it's known as citizen, community, participatory science. These are all slightly different versions of what we're talking about, so have slightly different definitions, but for our purposes, we can describe that as where members of the public collect data, perhaps develop questions of their own to answer with that data, and then ultimately contribute to the research and publication of research. So it's civilians, non-scientists getting involved in the scientific process and contributing to data sets that will ultimately be published and lead to further knowledge of a space, a phenomenon, etc. Our community science programmings at the Seacoast Science Center help us to drive positive change, and through these programs that are interactive, personal to our visitors, fun. They empower our learners of all ages to participate in the study of their homes and their local communities. So we see 100,000 visitors every year. A lot of them are local. We do see a lot of tourist traffic as well, but we really, through our community science programming, encourage folks that live in our neck of the woods to engage with the science that's happening in their own backyards. I won't necessarily bore everyone with the pedagogy or the philosophy of how we develop these programs, but we really believe that science education and scientific inquiry can happen at all ages and with all learners. So we've developed this network this framework that allows us to bring science education to every visitor, to every student, no matter where they're at in terms of knowledge base, time commitments, skill level, ability level. We really try to make science education and the scientific method accessible to everybody. And so that starts with observation as a scientific practice. So this is a great way that we engage our youngest learners, our newest learners to the field of science. You look around you, you follow your passion, your senses, and you start to record what you see, start to examine closely, start to think and reflect about what you're seeing in the moment. This is the first step in the scientific method, is that observation, and things that we can do as naturalists, as folks that work at the Science Center, is help our visitors to slow down, to observe with purpose, and start to think and reflect about what that observation might mean. And so this framework, it really starts small, or we say small, but this is honestly the largest opportunity for us. And then it builds. And so the benefit to that is that it is opposed to strict protocols that might have really large time commitments, where you have to learn a protocol, make a time commitment of a weekly data collection, etc. That doesn't always work in a setting like ours. We're a marine science nature center and aquarium. We might have visitors that come once, come many times. So we want to make sure that we're accessing those individual folks. And even if they're only with us one time, they come out with an observation program. So this could include things like field observation, field identifications, and things like bioblitzes, which I'll get into later on. And then that could include nature journaling, sketching, photography, a wide range of observation programming opportunities exists here. So this is a really easy, low barrier way to engage with practical foundational science skills, is with these observations. And then we jump to our inquiries, where we start to get into the nitty-gritty of scientific exploration a little bit. So you're asking questions, compare and contrast questions. You're coming up with some ideas about the animals that live there, or the creatures that you might see. So for example, and we'll talk more about this as well, if you're exploring invasive crabs on the seacoast, like this woman is holding here. You know, do they prefer a protected shoreline or an exposed shoreline? Do they prefer marshy or rocky shorelines? So these sort of questions that we often will direct our youth or our program participants to ask and develop. These are when we start to really explore those. And that directly leads us to what we often think of as citizen or community science are these investigations. So these are the formalized projects that have protocols that where we will, you know, we'll investigate a specific question with specific skills that we need. They then will compile that data someplace and manipulate it to get the answers that we need, and then you know, we'll crunch that data to get answers. And we have a variety of investigations that we play around with at the Seacoast Science Center. We are always exploring new opportunities to get involved with researchers. We're so fortunate to live in an area that has many opportunities for collaboration with folks who are doing this work. And so some examples of this would be, you know, contributing to green crab research or water quality monitoring or, you know, salt marsh or beach profiling. There are lots of opportunities in our area to get involved with things like that. And we really utilize the park as a living laboratory to allow us to investigate, you know, the changes that are happening in this area over time. And so that leads me directly to a brief orientation to where we're talking about. I'm going to be discussing a lot of changes that are occurring within this body of water here, and we call it the Gulf of Maine. So for those of us who are not as familiar, the Gulf of Maine is what we call this area from this section of the Atlantic Ocean that stretches from the tip of Cape Cod all the way up to Nova Scotia, and then is bounded on the east. So the eastern part of it is bounded by a set of underwater mountains, essentially. So those light blue areas, Georges Bank, Browns Bank, those are very shallow areas, but they're underwater mountains that create a barrier or a basin within the Gulf of Maine. So this area itself is a distinct body of water. It's traditionally protected from the larger Atlantic Ocean. And so it has its own little system inside of the Atlantic Ocean here. And there are water currents coming and going from the Bay of Fundy, from the northeast and southern channels, and all of that mixing of traditionally, historically, very cold and very nutrient dense water, along with a shallow basin, has allowed for many animals to thrive within this area and has made it one of the most productive parts of our coast here. So it's highly productive fishing grounds. The sunlight penetrating the really shallow waters has meant that it creates an ideal environment for tiny little sea creatures, phytoplankton, which are photosynthetic algae, and zooplankton, which are little small free-floating species like krill, and that attracts an entire ecosystem to this area. So historically, this has been a highly productive area that has attracted over 100 species of fish and sharks, as well as marine birds, whales, dolphins, porpoises, and much of the industry of this area has relied upon the productivity of the Gulf of Maine. So fishing grounds for cod, pollock, lobster, softshell clam, mussels, etc., have all relied on this body of water. So I'm going to be talking a lot about it today, and that's why we bring it up. So New Hampshire and Massachusetts are included in this Gulf of Maine. So it doesn't necessarily refer to just the state of Maine. Canada is also included in there, Nova Scotia as well. So this area is the Gulf of Maine, and it is changing rapidly and is quite dynamic right now. This is some photos. These are some photos of our one of our exhibit halls at the Science Center that we have called our dynamic Gulf of Maine, because it is changing. And right behind these little campers here, you'll see on the wall we have an infographic that displays some of the changes that are happening. So when you enter this space at the Science Center, you'll see this video on the wall will show you how fast the Gulf of Maine is warming. And unfortunately, it is warming faster than 99% of the world's oceans. It is one of the fastest, most rapidly warming temperatures of ocean in the world. And there are also dramatic shifts that are happening to our currents because of that temperature change, because of depleting ice shelves and seasonal weather variations. There is a lot that is changing in the Gulf of Maine. So when folks enter this space, they'll be greeted with that infographic, and then all of the tanks and exhibits within there highlight different aspects of hope and change and urgency within our Gulf of Maine here. So there's a lobster pot and trap. There's a lobster area behind those kiddos. There's tanks that focus on invasive species. There's tanks that focus on some of the most biodiverse habitats that we see in the ocean right here in the Gulf of Maine. There's tanks that focus on sustainable agricultural practices that are being developed and studied at UNH. So there's a lot going into this space, but our focus is on the hope and urgency of this space and how quickly it is changing. Alrighty, and so a lot of this, as I've mentioned, is happening because of climate change. There's warming temperatures in the Gulf of Maine, shifting ocean currents, and with those two things are brought a host of invasive species. And one of the community science projects that we've really taken and developed and dispersed throughout the Science Center's curriculum is our green crab exploration and investigation. So the green crab is a European species. It's been here for a long time, for over 100 years, but in recent decades, it's really become an invasive species, which is a non-native introduced species that becomes overabundant, destructive, and disruptive to a habitat, and they can cause ecological and economic harm, or sometimes both, and green crabs definitely do both. The habitats of the coast and the estuary are under threat from these crabs, both because they are predators to some of our most important fisheries, like other species of crab and softshell clam, most currently, and eelgrass as well. They're disruptive to the habitat that eelgrass provides to many species of fish and other animals. So the warming temperatures of the Gulf of Maine have allowed this species to really flourish. They do better in warmer temperatures. Being from Europe, they occupied the Mediterranean, the mid-Atlantic over in Europe, so they are perfectly suited to these warming temperatures. I have a quick video to show you about some of the local work that's being done, featuring one of the scientists that we have also worked with very closely to develop our curriculum surrounding invasives and how we get our kiddos and our guests involved in that research. So here we go. Let's see.
So much of this is surrounded by Rachel Carson Wildlife Refuge. Yeah, this area is pretty well protected from development. Not protected from green crab, as you'll see in a second. It's just loaded with green crab. The European green crab are an invasive species originally from Europe. They've been here since the 1800s. They're an incredibly hardy species. They are almost impossible to kill. They reproduce at an incredible rate. And with a lack of natural predators, they have really changed our ecosystems in our estuaries. They like to prey upon shellfish. They really have done a number on the soft-shell clam industry, which I believe is, historically speaking, Maine's second largest fishery. They feed on oysters, mussels, all sorts of stuff. And so even some students were like, well, here's a remarkably abundant resource. Is it useful? Can we use it for anything? I'm Mike Macy. I am a former teacher of marine science at York High School, and I've been interested in fishing green crab for a number of years now, since meeting up with Katie Brodeur through some school projects.
He basically saw what I saw. He's like, why are people not, tapping this resource? It seems silly not to tap this resource. And he was willing to put in the time and effort. I'm Katie Brodeur. I am the Fisheries Extension Specialist for New Hampshire Sea Grant and UNH Cooperative Extension.
Green crab have a very hard shell with very little meat. So the picking market, which you have with lobsters or larger crab, is just not there. You could crack open a blue crab, or snow crab, or any larger crab, and you'll have a good amount of meat coming from that. It's just too painstaking, too laborious to try to do that with a green crab. And so what you have to do is you have to get them right after they molt and pull them out of the water when they're really soft, and that will stop their shells from hardening. And then you can consume the entire crab, shell and all. And you do that typically by deep frying them, and it's exactly the same way they do blue crab, soft-shell blue crab down in the Chesapeake area, which is a very, very lucrative business. We molted out maybe 100 crab this past spring. There's no doubt that even next year, we'd like to have a crack at commercial harvest of soft-shell green crab. It's the type of...
Alrighty, I'll pause it there. I'll stop it there. So what our research and what we've been contributing to research-wise to help with this is to help Gabby, who was featured in that, Katie Brodeur, to determine when these crabs are best harvested. So like Mike mentioned, they need to be soft shelled. There's no point in having them to fry up or to eat when they're hard shelled, unless you're going to put them in a stock or a stew. And Gabby's actually developed a whole cookbook for green crabs, which is fantastic, and I can link later on in the chat. But we wanted to know when would be the best time for a fishery to harvest these crabs. When are they soft shelled? And the Seacoast Science Center has been working with Gabby for 5 years or so now to help answer that question. So Gabby and us, we work together to develop a curriculum surrounding green crabs, invasive crab species, and we've developed this great green crab hunt that allows our students to participate in community science. So we have a data sheet that we've developed that is pulled straight from her research. And so our kiddos and our visitors will go out with that data sheet. They'll collect green crabs. They get to practice field skills like measuring and photo documentation. And then I act as a filter for that data. I collect those data sheets and upload them to the data portal that this data goes into. And so we've created the Great Green Crab Hunt for our visitors that are coming to the Seacoast Science Center one time. We've created our Rocky Shore investigation for students who are coming as a school group. And both of those allow our visitors to take part in this study. The cool thing is the portal that we utilize for this. It's called a democratic data portal. So that means our data is uploaded, and then anyone who is a part of that project is able to download the data set and see the results. And so what we found is, traditionally males are best harvested in the summertime, the high summer, and then females are best harvested late summer, early fall. But we're still contributing to that research. We're still contributing to those findings. And what's more important is that our visitors and students are able to participate in those field skills and figure out, that answer to that question. That I can also include the link to that overall project as well in a grant or to New Hampshire Sea Grant in the chat. And so this is just one example of how we use community science at the Seacoast Science Center, integrating it into visitor service programs. So programs that are for the public that are just visiting, and then also for our school groups that come and visit us. We try to, whenever possible, work with a researcher like Gabby to really get their perspective on how best to go about collecting this data and making sure that it's of good quality. So, acting like a filter, things like that. The other ways, one of the other ways that we engage in community science is through bioblitzes. And these are a great way to introduce students to biodiversity as a whole. It is really low barrier for entry, low time commitment, and in many cases, doesn't require that you know very much about the ecosystems that you are, that you're exploring. It's a great way for people to really get their interests piqued about the species that are around them. So a lot of my job at the Science Center is figuring out how to lower those barriers for entry and make community science accessible to the most amount of people. And these are a great way to do that. So a BioBlitz, in short, for those of us who don't know, is an event where participants will try to identify as many species as possible within a specific area and within a specific set of time or a specific time frame. You can also put limitations on the type of organism that you're looking for. So birds, insects, monarchs are good examples. And you can utilize tools to help you to do that and to collect your data, like iNaturalist. Many of us are probably familiar with that. It helps you identify, it helps you to collect that data and get it out to as many people as possible. It also allows other naturalists from wherever in the world that are interested to confirm and validate your sighting. So if you identify something incorrectly, it can be corrected, which is great. So what I love about this is that it really it means you need to have some sort of technology available to you. You can do a BioBlitz with a piece of paper and a list, which is also fantastic, in field guides. But I see, for our visitors, iNaturalist is going to be one of the best ways to do it. The Seek app is also really, really great for helping to identify plants and organisms. There are challenges available on both of these that really get folks into the like gamification of BioBlitzing. So those are both fantastic ways that I like to use. And I have a few that we do. We have an annual BioBlitz at the Science Center that's been running for 21 years, believe it or not. We have a data set of over 2,300 species that we've seen in Odiorn. We've been able to see species disappear, see new species come on the scene, invasive species come in. Last year, we saw our first blue crab, for example, which are traditionally of the mid-Atlantic and, Chesapeake Bay fame. So they're coming further up the coast because of warming ocean temperatures. So we saw our first blue crab last year. We see invasive species of shrimp, of insects. One BioBlitz a few years ago, we saw a small little wasp that had only ever been recorded one other time in the United States from Asia. So we're seeing species arrive and also disappear. We also, because we host this event in the fall, we see migratory species and we can look at the changes in their patterns over time and how they're migrating or when they're migrating. So it's a fantastic event. We highly encourage everyone to come. It's September 21st this year, but that has been going on. And that's a general BioBlitz. It happens for 24 hours within the confines of Odiorn Point State Park, and it's for any species. But you can also restrict these to be just about birds. And a good example of that would be something like an eBird trip, where you go out and you make a list of all the species you saw. You upload that information to eBird. That's amazing data that our ornithologists and those that are studying bird species can use. So it's a great example of participatory science. There are other great blitzes. So there's a pollinator BioBlitz that happened last year in the state of New Hampshire during New Hampshire's Pollinator Week. So you would go out and you would look for species of insects that were pollinators. There's monarch blitzes where you go out and you look for monarchs in their different phases, as well as milkweed. So there's all sorts of different blitzes that occur that are really great entry points for students to get at learning just the basics of what's out there and what's around them, and it makes them slow down and identify those species. And then once you identify, you can start to learn more about how species engage with each other and what their presence or absence or abundance might mean. I also, because we are seeing visitors for one day for a limited amount of time, I highly encourage visitors to look into projects on their own via different apps. So eBird, like I mentioned, Globe Observer is a great one that we use. It's via NASA, and that allows you to really collect and input data to large studies, large projects and it's super user-friendly, about cloud cover, about mosquito habitat, about tree height. There's all sorts of amazing protocols on there that are really user-friendly, and that can be done once at the Science Center with me, and then again when they get home or when they arrive in their local park or wherever they are, they can do that again. So it's encouraging that participation over and over again. Anecdata is one that's great for scientists. A lot of scientists love to use that if they're developing a protocol where they are going to have citizen scientists. It's a great way to host that data. And again, anyone can download it and play around with it. So teachers can use it in the classroom to teach their students about data and how to look at it, how to maneuver through it. So those are just a few. Journey North is one we use for monarchs. There are so many out there. The list could go on and on, but really the practice of hosting a program where we go into an app or into a protocol that's really user-friendly, and then hoping that by doing that once with a family that might be visiting from another part of the country, that they'll do that again when they get home and participate wherever they are. So with that, those are just some of the ways that we engage with our visitors and students in community science. We are always looking for new protocols. We, in this photo that is on the screen, we're exploring our seaweeds. So there's a lot to be done with seaweed monitoring, either seasonal growth of seaweeds, the abundance of seaweeds. It's an incredible resource of our coastline, used in all sorts of products that you wouldn't expect, but we're always adding to our list of participatory science protocols that we can play around with, that we can develop programming from. And it's a really great job to be able to see how to engage as many people as possible in the scientific method via these protocols. So with that, I think I will turn it back over to Brian for any questions. I'd love to be able to hear ideas and questions from everyone. So thank you all.
Thanks, Katie. I really appreciate that. And as Katie mentioned, yeah, we'd love to open it up to any sort of questions that folks have around Katie's work, around the work that she knows of around community or citizen science programming out there. I'd love to hear from other people's experiences as well. As a reminder, you can use the Q&A button that you can find at the bottom of your Zoom screen there. And I already got a question here in from Ken, who was stating, was it literally one blue crab that was encountered last year? It seems logical that if the water is warming, they might start migrating north. But does one crab make the case? Are blue crabs also being seen in other locations further north than before? Katie, are we going to become the new Maryland?
That's actually a really great question. So, especially in the context of migration, right? So there are species that migrate and whose migratory routes are started by one individual, and then that leads to more and more and more. So I'm thinking about like the black hawk that was seen in Portland like 7 years ago. I forget, but so there's a case of species just being off course, and we actually have a tank in our Gulf of Maine Hall called Ocean Orphans, where it's species from down south that get caught up in the jet stream and brought up here, and it doesn't indicate that we're going to be the new host for that species. It's a result of a current, right? But in the case of blue crabs, that was the first year that we saw blue crabs in our BioBlitz. The year before, they were becoming pretty abundant in the Great Bay and are being researched in the Great Bay as well. So I was kind of on the lookout for a blue crab. I kind of knew that it was a buzz that they were around. So yeah, that's one of the benefits of participatory science, is it allows you to collect data from far more places and habitats than if it was a few researchers with limited resources, right? So I'm able to confidently say like, oh, they were spotted here, 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 and here, because of the work of participatory scientists. And our BioBlitz was just one data point. But there were a lot that I knew of that I was keeping an eye out for.
Well, I'm also curious. I mean, one of the things, just from a broader perspective here. I mean, I know you mentioned some of them, but I mean, what are some of the challenges that you or your colleagues have faced in trying to, I guess, organize and coordinate, any sort of participatory science with the public?
That's a great question. So time commitment is number one, the biggest thing. So because we are, a museum and nature center, we have people visiting us for 1 to 2 hours, right? And that's, on the weekend with their kids, with their families, they might not be interested in that sort of a program, and that's totally okay. And so my job is really to figure out how to engage folks from every aspect. There are also people that are really excited about spending an hour a week out on the shore collecting data. That's who's really good for those intensive protocols, right? So the biggest challenge is really how do you engage people on all of those levels, and also all of those entry points. Some people have high experience with field work and are very resilient to things like cold temperatures, bugs, things like that. Some are not. Some are, it's their first time out on the shore, and they want to explore and they want to get a little bit more involved, get their feet wet to say, and identify the species around them, but they don't know too much more than that. And so being able to address all of those needs is probably the biggest challenge, but also I think one of the things that makes it the most fun is that you can do so many different things and you're probably going to be accessing somebody. So
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that's a question that from our experiences, and certainly trying to get people excited about the opportunities. I think another question that sort of I know has popped up in other circles is also around access. I know you definitely mentioned that earlier on, and while it's really, I mean, it's hard to put a dollar figure on the amount of effort that some volunteers have. Maybe they're retired and they have the means to be able to really contribute so much on a volunteer basis, and that's so valuable. But how do you also scale it in such a way that you might be able to get I mean, in some cases, your goals might be, and just inspiring first timers, no matter what their age and sort of time and means might be, to engage in science in some way. So I'm sure you've had some experiences and been thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, access is such a tricky thing. It's science in general, but then it's one of the reasons why, as much as I would love for everyone to, use to go out and use a field guide and really get, down and dirty with that and identify, it's one of the reasons why things like Anecdata, Globe Observer are so powerful, is because there are projects on both of those where you can literally be on a city block and take a picture of a standing bucket of water, and that is mosquito habitat, and that's contributing to their mosquito protocol. And that's all you have to do is download that app, take a picture, upload it, and you've just contributed to participatory science. Or on Anecdata, there's a project about light pollution where you go outside at night and you take a picture of the stars wherever you are, and that contributes to information about light pollution in your area and what that might mean for migrating bird species, etc. So they're really powerful tools that allow pretty much everyone to access participatory science.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And as you mentioned, Globe Observer, certainly from for our weather and sky loving and cloud loving folks, there is the cloud portion. There are many different protocols in Globe Observer, and that's one we've been getting excited about recently. So for anyone connecting with the program and they just love to look at clouds, there's a protocol for you too there.
Yeah, we're
I
planning
recommend.
a cloud protocol program for the summer too. It's really fascinating.
Just lost the train of thought. Oh, so I know you'd mentioned, so I believe it was the bio blitzes you said in particular. Is that your longest running sort of participatory science project that you have? Is that right?
Yeah, definitely, by far. I mean, the Science Center is 32 years old, so 21 of that have had a BioBlitz, of those years have had a BioBlitz. And, participatory science is something that is really vogue in science and technology centers now, and it's becoming more and more popular. And it's just so cool that, 21 years ago, we were like, yeah, let's do participatory science. So it's been going on for a long time, and it's been going on so long that the original lists are all paper and binders, and preserved. And so it's really cool. And expanding that away from, those happen on one day every fall, but we are expanding into bio blitzes at dusk and in the evening, because you'll get different species or at different times of year, or for specific species and challenges. So that individual event has been going on for 21 years. We have scientists and experts from around the Seacoast area come to engage in that work and help us to identify all of those species. We have experts in birds and mushrooms and insects, and they come for that day. It's a really fun event. But that list is exhaustive, and it's a lot of bugs,
Yeah.
which is what happens.
Well, I'm curious, you may have mentioned previously, but I mean, are there any particular trends that have been identified in that time span that are really starting to sort of either stick out a little bit more over time?
Well, the biggest trend that I notice, apart from, this species is now seen that wasn't, is that the biodiversity of your BioBlitz is really best predicted by the types of experts that you have on the day. So there was a year where we had our first entomologist join us, and we got like 1,000 bugs, and that it just really, it depends on the who you have there. But other than that, no, we've noticed many new species, and not to say invasive necessarily, but new species of insects from all over the world that you would never expect to see. We see, for example, praying mantis, like never. We very rarely see praying mantis, but we see Chinese mantid all the time. So yeah, so there are just and you know, green crabs, the invasive green crab we see all the time everywhere. You can't move without seeing a green crab, but the native Jonah and rock crabs see them much more infrequently. So you know, there's a diminishing biodiversity overall. If you exclude those non-native species. So it's certainly the biggest trend is just change in what we're seeing. Lots of change.
Well, I love that it sounds like you have the metadata to let people to look back to know what specialists you had on hand too. That definitely will color the data.
No, it's absolutely true. And you'll look at the like pie charts we make every year of the different proportions of types of species. And it's like, oh, that was the year we had the bug expert. That was the year we had the mammal expert. That was, you can tell.
Yeah, well, hey, that's great. Data is data, and
Data
in
is
those
data.
cases, it will definitely serve a purpose in one way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. Well, maybe just one last question here, Katie. I mean, making sure that one more question actually, Ken adds another one here asking about whether or not you have or foster relationships with basically as many school districts within, you know, sort of reasonable travel. I mean, can you talk about maybe some of those relationships that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways that like Brian and I know each other, right, is because of a project where we try to connect as many of our educators and our science and technology centers and you know, our land trusts, people like that together and create those connected learning opportunities. So for example, in a week, we are having a BioBlitz at a local school in Northampton. So it's going to be really fun. We see, because we are a field trip hotspot, which, you know, I'm sure you understand, we see the same teachers year after year who get really jazzed about coming to the Science Center, about teaching their students in their ocean unit, who want to do the next thing that we have, you know, to offer. And so those are the teachers that we pilot things with, that we practice things with, and then ultimately that we grow our participatory science programs with. So yeah, we're having a great example of that occurring in just a week. Our first BioBlitz offsite, which will be really fun, where the Seacoast Science Center is kind of acting as the experts. And you know, 7th and 8th graders are going to be helping elementary students identify with iNaturalist and use field guides and nets and all sorts of cool things in their schoolyard. So it's going to be a really, really fun experiment. And we look forward to having more opportunities like that. But yes, because we see teachers year after year, we have a lot of great relationships with our local schools.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
those relationships certainly add a lot of value year after year, and that's exciting. Hey, and who knows, you might go in this one year and get it kicked off, but I mean, once teachers hopefully see also how easy it is to manage
Oh
and
yeah.
get involved, especially with some of the apps like you mentioned, like iNaturalist and some of these that are just really pretty intuitive, that hopefully it's the sort of thing that you won't even be needed after that. They'll just do it year
Well,
after
and what's funny too is that the kids will pick it up in like 30 seconds. I'm going to be over here going, how do I do it? And the kids will be like, it's I got it. It's fine. And so, so yeah, it'll be a really fun day.
Oh, that's great. Well, Katie, I really appreciate you giving your time this evening to share all about your work and inform our listeners a little bit about community and participatory and citizen science. Pick your term.
Yeah.
Thanks again. Looking forward to our shared programming that's going on moving forward here. In fact, while I have you, want to share a little bit about the program in which we'll be having an educator come on your way?
Absolutely. So we are hosting our Nature at Night series monthly throughout the year. It's the third Friday of every month from 4 to 6. And we theme it, you know, based on phenologically what's going on, you know, the time of year. And it's a completely free community program. And the Mount Washington Observatory will be joining us for our July program on the 21st. Where we'll be discussing wacky weather, which is certainly a big a big important topic for participatory science with cloud data and, tidal change and all sorts of things. But they will be joining us for a program all about weather and monitoring, and we're so excited to have you join us.
We're excited to come down from the mountains and happy to host you up our way.
Who doesn't want to come to Rye in July? Come on.
I think we timed it just right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Katie. I really appreciate it once again. We're coming out near the end of the hour here, and just want to thank everybody for participating tonight. If you enjoyed tonight's free program, we strongly encourage you to make a donation to support free programs like these over at mountwashington.org. You can hit the donate button in the upper right-hand corner there. If you have thoughts about tonight's program or suggestions for future programs, please take some time to fill out the Google Forms survey that'll show up in your Zoom window following this program here, or in a follow-up email. And then finally, we have 2 more Science in the Mountains programs scheduled coming for June and July. On June 18th, NASA senior Earth scientist Brian Campbell is going to be talking all about the NASA's Ice, Cloud, and Land Elevation Satellite, also known as ICESat-2, which benefits from citizen science data. And also on Tuesday, July 23rd at 7 p.m., Project Drawdown's Managing Director Elizabeth Bagley will be joining us to share all about her organization's work on climate change solutions. So if you want to register for those programs or watch any of the previous programs you might have missed, you can go get those over at mountwashington.org, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks again, Katie. Have a great night and take care, everybody.
Thanks, Brian. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.